Willem de Kooning was a big buddy of his. Stuart Davis also, until they had a little bit of a falling out, slightly a political falling out. That Gorky really wanted to focus on art, and Davis wanted to get into the issues of unions and such that were going on in the 1930s. So he did know a number of Armenians, and I would say most of the non-Armenians probably, once they got to know him, knew he wasn't actually Russian, and he was Armenian. He hung out with John Graham, who was Russian, who would know that Gorky couldn't have spoken Russian very well. He had a couple of words that he kind of put on for this character that he kind of played, this Arshile Gorky character. Also, I should mention, and I have a little dig in my book about this, he did frequent an Armenian restaurant in New York, and I happened to meet a descendant of somebody who owned that, and they were just bemoaning the fact that Gorky, in repayment for them feeding him, because oftentimes he didn't have money, gave them a drawing. They used the parents who looked at it and thought, what are these scribbles? Used it to wrap fish. Oh no. And the descendant was asking me, so how much would something like that have been worth now? So there's this really interesting relationship that he kind of had at that contemporary time with Armenians. So Raoul Heg, who was a sculptor from Armenia, of Armenian descent, was pretty good friends with him. He did not get along with William Saroyan at all. So there was some very interesting, again, this kind of identity, this change of identity, and this idea of wanting to become an artist. He had this kind of strange relationship with the Armenian community, and this is actually the subject of my next essay, where I'm going to be talking about this a little bit, because he's so important to the Armenian community. I mean, he flies in the face of denial, essentially. He flies in the face of, we're still here and look at what this person did. And so he has a really important place for Armenians as far as our identity, and so it's a very kind of difficult, a difficult and a kind of messy relationship.
Yes, Joe.
Members of his family lived in Waltham, I'm aware of, and the pieces of art that they had, I understand, were given or loaned to the Rose Art Museum at Brandeis. And I was wondering whether you know the disposition of those, given the tenuous nature of the museum itself right now.
If they were loaned, they would have been returned. Once they're given, if the Rose goes and they sell the collection, they sell the collection. But there are some family that I met, and I unfortunately cannot. There are some family that I met there that do still have some of his works, and as a matter of fact, one of their pieces is on exhibition there. So.
The Bavarian family?
Yes. Yes.
That's what I'm talking about.
Yes. So they still own them and were approached and have loaned a piece to the exhibition.
Yeah, Greg?
Yes, I saw a documentary many years ago about Gorky's murals at the Newark airport and how they were uncovered. I guess he did that under the Works Project Administration, which, part of the New Deal would help starving artists get employment. But did Gorky do a number of works for the WPA? And I was curious about your comment a little while ago where you said he had a falling out with some of them because he was not political, but the other artists were. Did you understand why he wasn't political?
It's interesting because he kind of was. He was very for the establishment of the Armenian Republic until stuff kind of started coming out about Stalin. There's a lot of that with his relationship with his sister, younger sister Vartush, who was the one that he came to America with. The murals, there are 2 surviving murals from this that were discovered. 73 were they exhibited? Oh goodness, I'm an art historian. I'm really bad with dates. And the 2 surviving ones were actually recently conserved by Philadelphia as part of this exhibition. So they were just done at Williamstown, yeah. So they were recently conserved. They'd been conserved before because initially they'd been covered with paint. So the story is that a lot of these artists in the 1930s, in order to survive, were able to apply for projects and get projects through the Works Project Administration, and it was a Roosevelt's kind of New Deal project, and that kept a lot of them alive and fed, and also produced a lot of great art. And your old post offices, if you go to any of your original post offices, you would see murals. Those were probably done by artists as part of that program. So there were a number of them that were employed, and so they also, you would compete for projects. So there are a number of studies that he did for proposed projects as well. So.
Where did he get, or where did you take the name Arshile from? And then, what sort of reaction did his family have to him changing his name? I mean, is there anything on the record? I mean, did he insist on being called Gorky, or?
Yeah, actually, in particular, Sister Bartouche would refer to him that way. But I think, that all essentially gets a little bit messy, too, changing his name. I mean, it seems like, and I elaborate this a little bit more on my essay, that, he just didn't want that patriarchal connection necessarily, because he was really irritated with his dad. So that was part of the reason. But, to get into the name itself and kind of what that means, a lot of people have talked about the last name Gorky meaning bitter, and of course there's this level of associations with that name Gorky because it was Maxime Gorky's, and so there's a certain automatic heritage and recognition, and one time in an interview he claimed to be the cousin of Maxime Gorky, which totally doesn't make sense if Maxime Gorky is a pseudonym, but some people didn't know that, so you would get this automatic kind of connection. Now the name Arshile is defined in a couple of ways, that it's a variation of the Armenian Arshak, or a variation of Achilles. However, and I have to say that I would subscribe to this, in Adam Agoyan, who is named his son Arshile, by the way, makes a very convincing argument that no, that was in fact a Georgian name, and which makes sense because before Gorky made it to America, he was in Tiflis for a little while. So he probably would have encountered that name, and it makes sense because Georgians, as opposed necessarily to your straight Slavic Russian, Georgians at that time in the late 20s and into the 30s were one of those kind of hip nationalities to be. So that it was a kind of exotic, but it was a learned exotic, and it was a cultured exotic. So that would also give him kind of more, something more to kind of draw on, or a different kind of recognition, again, and kind of walking into a room. And he did kind of play that role. I mean, he took on the name, and he really did kind of play a role of the starving artist and slightly the tragic artist. So it's and told stories about himself. So it's really no surprise that for the first, almost 30 to 40 years of people writing about him, everybody gets everything wrong for the most part. So, he told them the wrong things. His first biography told her some of the bad information. He told his wife that his mother died of a dog bite. So she had no idea.
Taking advantage of your resource of being here, can you give us an interpretation of his mother's hands being...
Oh, gosh. The hands.
Because it's always
Let me
popping
back
up,
up.
and one of his hands is covered and the other one isn't, right?